Hey, DJ.
Well, yeehaw, Wes. How are you, sir?
Yeehaw. How you doing there,
Got my
cowboy?
yee hat on.
Hey, man, did you know that William F. Cody, also known as Buffalo Bill, created the first major rodeo and the first Wild West show in North Platte, Nebraska in 1882?
I did not.
Well, hey, there's more. Following this successful endeavor, Cody organized his touring Wild West show, leaving other entrepreneurs to create what became professional rodeo.
You know what? I didn't. Hats off to Bill. Yeehaw.
Wild Bill, baby. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Live, Love, Wylie podcast, hosted by Wes Dorsey and DJ Shirley. Connecting people in the city we live and love. Well, DJ, I'm super excited about this episode.
I am too. I had to switch my hat.
You wore a cowboy hat?
I did. Still here. I had to switch it. And before we go anywhere, I got some hate mail from... I did not give a shout out and a thank you to the Live, Love, Wylie band last episode with Dr. Vincent. So I apologize. They threatened to quit.
I know. They're in the other room.
They're in the other room, and which I have to say thank you to them. Hats off to them as well. We appreciate them.
Band's amazing. So, yeah, we got a super cool episode.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah. So what do we got going on? Who do we have?
Today we have two guests today, which is awesome. We have Mr. Marvin Fuller. He is the branch president at Inwood National Bank here in Wylie. And we also have Mike Agnew, who is the CEO and president of the Wylie Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
So we want to welcome them.
Yeah,
Mike, Marvin, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I think we're talking about gardening today, correct? Is that what we're...
Something like that. Something to do with dirt and...
Well, before we get too far, let's get to know these guys a little bit.
Yeah. Anybody that's ever really listened to our podcast knows we like to get to know our guest.
Yeah.
A little bit of history. You know, what brought you to Wylie? How long you been here? You want to start, Marvin?
Sure. I'll take a stab at it.
There you go.
Guys, I've been in the community 31 years, came here in 1991, worked for American National Bank for 11 years and grew up just west of here in Plano. Moved there in the early 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and kind of been in this area for a while. After I changed from American National to Inwood National Bank, that was in 2002, and have been there since. And so 31 years in banking in Wylie, Texas has been my career.
Wow.
Raised two kids. Wife worked here for the Municipal Water District for 27 years.
Wow.
So Wylie's been home.
You've seen a lot of changes.
That's what I was about to say. The exact same thing. From Plano to Wylie, probably seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, 8,800 people when we first came here.
Oh, my gosh.
What is it now?
That's a Mike question.
62.
Yeah, so he's got a little over 60, right?
62.
Yeah.
8,000 to 62,000. It's phenomenal growth.
It's big growth.
Yeah, I think I came to Wylie 20,000 people later.
There you go.
It was 29 when I got
29,000,
here
yeah.
in 04, and president of the Wylie Chamber. And before that, I worked in Plano at the Plano Chamber. So came to a small town, small chamber, just a great community, and enjoyed doing it. Did it here. My son went to school, was able to kind of help him, watch him grow and be involved as a dad, and then really get to know some great people in Wylie. That was the coolest thing about the 18 years is the people I've met.
What is the and we can get on the chamber, we can dive into all that kind of stuff because we're gonna talk about that. But the chamber, talking about the growth of Wylie, what did the chamber look like when you first got here? I mean, even if it's not an exact number, but what do you recall the growth that the chamber has seen? Because I know there's so many businesses around Wylie that are involved in it now. What was it like back then, almost 20 years ago?
Yeah, we were at about 250. I had one person that was my office manager, and as the town has grown, we've grown too. We're at 420 something members now.
Yeah,
we have 3 people on staff, and great volunteer base too.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I always like to ask the question. We asked Dr. Vincent, and I figured this is something that we can keep forever for now because I think it's just an interesting thing. Marvin, what did you want to be when you grew up when you were a kid?
Well, I was probably just going to be a cowboy.
There you go. That's perfect for this episode.
I've heard that you really do love rodeo.
Well, grown up in an agriculture-based family. My grandfather ranched in South Texas. My dad was a feedlot operator for a number of years and ranches in the north of Blue Ridge and McKinney area. And so got cousins and brother, he's still in ranching, and so got roots as far as cattle operations and so forth. So I'm kind of the black sheep of the family in the banking. So.
That's right. Well, hey, somebody has to fund the operations eventually, right? I mean, that's the way it works. Did you ever do rodeo yourself?
Well, I was never very good at it, but I did attempt a couple.
There was some
times.
attempts.
Yeah.
I think the farthest I've gotten is a mechanical bull. I think that's about as far as I've ever made. I mean, I've been on a horse, but I've never wanted the horse to throw me off on purpose.
Right. Yeah. Bucking one. And,
No. Mike, what about you? Extensive rodeo experience?
Yeah, my rodeo experience was nil.
Okay.
Absolutely nil. I was interviewed for the chamber president's job, and it was mentioned in the interview as one of the events that the Wylie Chamber did. And I'd been to the Mesquite Rodeo. I think growing up in Dallas, you have to do that once a year. It's kind of the pilgrimage. But that was all I'd ever seen, and very little of that. And my first rodeo was a ranch rodeo. Now, the rodeo has an incredible history in Wylie, but I got in the middle, I guess, of that history as it was going from a ranch rodeo to eventually we went to the rough stock, which is like a normal, you'll see it at Mesquite. You'll see the roping and bulls and all that. But yeah, that was my first, that was actually my first event when I hired.
It's a good one to start with.
Yeah. It was a lot of work and a lot of new vocabulary I had to learn. And we had a great committee. I think Marvin was on the committee. We had Red Bybuth was on it. Former city manager was on it. Our mayor at the time, John Mundy, was on it. It was just a bunch of guys that were very passionate about what they were doing and didn't know if I was at the right place until we hit Saturday night. And Saturday night, the place was packed. It was just decorated. It looked outstanding. And you kind of went, okay, now I get this. And
you get why it's a thing.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I caught the bug then, and now I'm still doing it. So.
Yeah, the Mesquite Rodeo, man, I think it was always big. I mean, I grew up in East Texas.
Yeah.
2 hours east. And we as a kid, we'd come up to the Mesquite Rodeo.
Yeah.
You know, my grandfather was in cattle and land and horses and stuff like that. And so he would just, I was the only grandson. And so I would load up with him and we'd come to the Mesquite Rodeo and have a good time.
Oh, it shuts down. I mean, the city, I grew up in Mesquite, but you know, that it was the thing. I mean, and it affects that entire town. I mean, you go through the high schools and stuff and you've got this segment and community of like, we called them the cowboy kids, you know, like the boots every day. They had the buckles, you know, like it was just, they were living their best life in this metropolitan city that Mesquite came, but it was very much still, and still to this day in certain areas, it's still a rodeo town, you know, you can't help it.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, we can get what Mike wants to be when he grows up. We can't miss that.
Yeah.
Just for the theme today, I wanted to be a cowboy too.
Okay, I like that. I also can appreciate that we wore matching shirts without exchanging emails.
See, I brought you guys gifts, and then I see you have one on.
I saved mine. I still have this one from last year.
Very good.
Yeah, he didn't get me one.
I didn't.
Well, I brought some for you guys.
All right,
You
perfect.
Look at that.
Thank you.
I'll leave these with you.
You know, I had a really cool, I was going to just go like, let's talk rodeo. We already started talking rodeo. So let's kind of dig into.
Do you need the hat to do that? Let's talk rodeo. Okay.
It's probably too small for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But anyway, let's talk early days, right? I mean, this is the 29th rodeo or.
This is kind of the 29th of this version. And I always tell people it was kind of the one that you guys started, but it had a history before that you built from. So I'm excited about being here just to listen to this because I always knew there was a history. I've never actually listened to Marvin talk about it.
Yeah,
so
let's talk about the early days.
Well, I'm probably not the best historian, but as I told you, our family moved to Plano in the late 60s, and Plano never did have a rodeo, but Wylie always had a traditional rodeo. And I don't know exactly when it started, maybe I think early 60s or so, and there's still some family members around that are still could probably remember this a whole lot better than me. But John Coomer was one that I remember that was started the rodeo, and actually John passed away during one of the rodeos, had a heart attack. And so,
Oh, no.
But he was a key figure in starting the rodeo. And his daughter Ann and granddaughter Sterling went to school here in Wylie, and so they'd always had a big history in Wylie as far as rodeo goes. The Owens family, the Gibson family, Trammels, Ericksons, just a lot of them that are still around today. And the rodeo, as I remember it, was held out where the bus barn is right now, 1378 or Country Club. And that's where the rodeo grounds were. And I don't know exactly when they built it, but in that day and time, there was always kind of a tradition that the rodeos would be on a certain day of the month or the year, and they would travel from community to community. Like Blue Ridge was the first or second weekend of July, and Caddo Mills was a certain weekend, and Wylie was the second or third weekend of July, and then Bonham was the fourth, and so that was kind of the tour. Adrian Parker was a big producer back then, and he was always brought real tough stock, and sanction-wise, they always had a good show of contestants and so forth. And so that's my history, or what I remember as far as Wylie Rodeo is where it started. And I don't know, I don't want to get it too much in this, but the economy kind of changed probably the late 70s, early 80s. That's maybe when Wylie was getting a little more attention and starting to maybe grow a little bit. And they had some pressure to sell the Wylie Rodeo land and sold it off. And I think it was a concrete plant or somebody like that bought it, and it was shut down for 10, 15 years. Let me back up there. I mean, the late 70s, the Dallas series was real popular, and JR and all them, and I know y'all probably familiar with this, that they filmed some of the Dallas episodes, portions of it in the Wylie area. The old First State Bank downtown, they had a scene there, and a couple of houses in town that they used as far as some of the scenes. Well, the rodeo that you see on the Dallas show was filmed at the Wylie Rodeo Arena.
Really?
Country Club. And so I know they did it for at least 2 years, but the Wylie Rodeo Club, the group, matter of fact, my father-in-law was, Royce Carter was the president of the group at that point in time, and they would, commission, or, the group would come out and film, and they would film certain parts of,
for their show.
Yeah, for their show, as far as
That's neat.
Bobby was roping, or somebody.
I loved watching Dallas when I was a kid. Yeah,
And they became popular. I mean, I know that they started doing they redid it and started doing some other things, and they used some of the old stuff and some of the new stuff or whatever. But we've never known. Now I got to go back and watch it. You know what I mean? Go back and find the rodeo scenes from Dallas, and now I just kind of get to know that.
They had that one scene, I forget, was it Krebs? They in a big old car going to the gas station downtown.
It was right here downtown. Yeah.
Ray Krebs was the ranch manager.
Yeah,
he was. And then there was Dusty was the big one that came to town that was interrupted all the, I guess, the Sue Ellen stuff. I can't remember all that, but he was the one, and that was so funny. The Bobby. I mean, he was pretty natural athlete and could, get on a horse, or look. You'd think that he knew what he was doing. And the guy the Dusty that was supposed to, in the episode, that was supposed to be the expert or the real good cowboy, he was the one that had a challenge.
He couldn't do any of it.
The real part of it. So
He had a substitute. Right?
He had a stunt double for that part.
Well, I have a question. When did it become? Was that in the ranch format when you were doing it?
No,
then?
that was a traditional rodeo.
Okay, that was standard rodeo.
That was your standard championship type rodeo that you've got right now. And like I said, I don't know when the last rodeo was. That was actually, let me back up here before I forget this and get in trouble. My wife and I, our first date was at the Wylie Ranch Rodeo.
Oh, yeah, you would have gotten in trouble for that.
Right.
July 22nd, 1976. So that's,
wow.
I do have a little history there with the Wylie Rodeo. But anyway, I think it was maybe 80, 81, something like that was the last rodeo that they had, and they'd sold it. And so it went for 10, 12 years or so with no rodeo in Wylie. And I don't even know if they even had the July Jubilee days. Back in that day, the July Jubilee days the rodeo was the same week.
Yeah.
So anyway, during the 80s, the term ranch rodeo event started getting popular.
Yeah.
And that was more of a team atmosphere type deal where you'd have teams come compete, 4 people on a team.
It's more is it more event based? I mean, the normal rodeos are event based, but it's a little different, correct?
It's more of the the duties or the work that you do on a ranch,
Right.
that they would simulate.
Okay.
The particular events would similar to some of the work they do on a ranch. And so anyway, that had got popular, and that's where I never did really do. I think I calf roped one time at Wylie, and didn't do any good. But ranch rodeos, participating as a team member, I mean, that was something that I really enjoyed and really got involved with. Well, that was probably late '80s. Terrell had a big ranch rodeo, and a lot of teams from around this area would go compete there. I actually competed with a group out of Bonham, a particular team there. And so anyway, we would travel and go to ranch rodeos. Well, Greg Abbott was from Wylie. He and Bart Abbott were from Wylie, and he decided hey, let's have one in Wylie and bring it back. Long story short, we didn't have an arena here in Wylie anymore.
Right.
And so they had it. He had one out at South Fork Ranch, and it's just the first time starting, and probably wasn't quite as well attended that first one. And long story short, he kind of came to the chamber. My wife happened to be on the chamber, maybe helping out on a part-time basis, and between her and Greg, they pretty much started what I think was 1993 was the first ranch rodeo, and brought rodeo back to Wylie. Brought it back to Wylie as far as events and sponsors and so forth.
Right.
But it was actually held at the South Fork Ranch.
Right.
And at that point in time, I mean, the economy had been through tough times through the
Sure.
80s and coming back a little bit, but still, Chamber of Commerce had their traditional members and so forth, but then they had that core group that, they just couldn't see the value. And the ranch rodeo and bringing the rodeo back to Wylie kind of brought some people to the chamber, or got involved with the chamber that maybe wouldn't have traditionally thought their business may have benefited from it. So, so at that point in time, we, got the ranch rodeo started going, and got businesses involved. Like I said, that hadn't been, but Ken Swayze with his company, Brent Bates, the Pools, Guy Pool, Doug Pool, they were some of the big ones to start, as far as from a sponsorship standpoint, and probably would have never been involved in the chamber. Long story short, with that, we were able to give extra prizes when they came back or when they got involved, and gave us more
more attraction to
draw
the competitors.
Exactly. And when you have the ranch rodeo, it's more of like a family type event.
Sure.
They bring their kids and so forth, and we incorporate the calf scrambles, the mutton bustings, and then we also tried to involve some of the business leaders that traditionally weren't involved in rodeo. We would have businessman mugging. Well, that was where some guys that would never even be in an arena, didn't need to be in an arena, but they would go out there and try to figure out how they could throw down a steer. Or one of the classics was the calf dressing. They would have a calf on a halter, and they would try to put big shorts on it. I remember my mom sewing.
Mike, I feel like some of this might need to come back.
It's the reason when I started, there was a storage place that had big shorts.
You're like,
and
what
you're
are
like,
these?
What is this? And we did a stick horse race too. So I had all these handmade stick horses. What do we do with these? What's the rodeo that we're doing here? I didn't get it.
Are there actual animals involved?
Yeah,
like, what is this for?
They're fake animals with weird big shorts. That's all I saw at first.
That is hilarious.
But the business, there are some pictures.
Stick horse races too.
Yeah. The pictures of the businessman mugging, you'll be looking at it and maybe, wait a minute, that's Sam Satterwhite. Isn't he the EDC director now?
What's he doing grabbing that steer?
They took some beatings. And, I was looking at that going, I don't want to do that. So we're not going to do that event. Let's do something different. Let's do rough stock. And that was Red Bibas, who brought in the idea of doing what they do at Mesquite with the calf roping and the more traditional, I guess, commercial rodeo. And that was when we switched. I did one ranch rodeo, and then we switched to the rough stock.
And that was in,
I want to say it was like 06.
is when you
05,
we switched to
a rough stock rodeo.
rough stock rodeo. Okay.
Yeah. We brought in a producer. We were part of a circuit at the time, and still is. It was the PRCA, then UPRA. It's kind of like the championship belts of boxers.
Sure.
They have a lot of different sanctioning bodies, but that got us different participants. We were a tour stop, so to speak, where they'd come to get points. And so it really kind of kept us in that rodeo, rough stock area, because that was what they sanctioned, was the rough stock rodeo.
Right.
And we, I don't know what we were thinking, but we said we wanted to do 2 nights instead of 1. And I guess most rodeos traditionally do 2 or 3 nights.
Yeah.
And so we did, and we're still doing that. But that's kind of how it switched, and it in a lot of ways switched from just some passionate people in this town who it was their thing. They wanted to do it, and they took charge of it till we kind of committeeized it and brought in more of our businesses, and it allowed us to put a little more business recognition out there.
Sure.
But still, I don't know that there's been a year that I think has been successful or not successful until I talked to Marvin, and we try to make the standard what was given to us.
Yeah.
And we just hope we do, but it's definitely different. And I would imagine we deal with different problems than you used to have to deal with when you would do it. But every year there's a new one.
Well, to back up on that transition, we were at South Fork for probably 3 or 4 years. And we even had, when we draw people, they were coming from all over the state as far as team-wise. And we actually had the opportunity to meet KSCS announcer Bill Kinder. And he would give us a shout-out on KSCS, and that was pretty big for Wylie, Texas, to have that on the radio.
Right.
And he ended up, we invited him to the rodeo, and he ended up coming to the rodeo, and he was one of the announcers, kind of provide the color. Brent Bates was always our announcer in the booth, but he and Bill Kinder got to working off each other. That was always pretty entertaining right there, just in itself.
Yeah, you got a local radio celebrity that's roaming around the Wylie Rodeo, and we're getting recognition. And I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a lot of people that, as we grew, the rodeo grew, and a lot of attention. I mean, guys, we were hauling bleachers from the Wylie fields to South Fork. It's because we were one time a year for them, and they weren't going to spend any extra money as far as bleachers or stuff like that. And so we'd kind of outgrow their location. And so with that, we had leaders like Henry Garland. He was a big advocate. Bill Lewis with the Birmingham Land Trust. He's the one that really made the thing work. As we put that's why it's located out at the Ag Barn, is the Birmingham facility out there. And Bill and the trust actually funded probably about $40,000 worth of the arena panels and gates and so forth to help make that transition there. And of course, when we did that, all we had was an arena. We didn't have lights, we didn't have sound, we didn't have a lot of things, and man, it was just quite a production to be able to do that. But over the years, just good people have contributed and brought more and more to it. Brent Bates got lights from when they tore down the University of North Texas Stadium. He brought the light poles and put them up, and the trust was part of that. And we actually had lights out there for one season. So anyway, through that year, there's been a bunch of good people. Bobby Smith was always a big supporter. Keith Anderson, the old ag teacher in town, Tom Hickey, was actually a high school rodeo champion from Plano. A national high school rodeo champion. He would come out and he would judge the event. So we always had some good, people that just had a lot of roots and so forth. And I'm probably forgetting a bunch. Like you said, Sam Satterwhite was a Trojan as far as setting up and operating, just like you.
Yeah,
But to bring it back to Wylie, and then for us, we ended up we bought out a school or something in Terrell was tearing down something. And they had some bleachers, and we bought out bleachers, and we.
It was an annual. Okay, like I said, annually you see a problem. There's always something.
Yeah.
And it's growth related, or it's just they didn't realize that pole needed to be out of the arena, not in the arena. And every year we would get some angel that would donate something, and they would get a phone call from Marvin or somebody at the school. And Bates was the one that, hey, we've got these lights from North Texas. Do you want to put those up?
Yes.
$3,000 a year in renting lights that move, and now I can tell any North Texas grad that I'm still playing under your lights.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit. So I believe we touched on it a lot, right? But kind of want to. I may have missed it. We talked about a lot of people that volunteered and gave back and helped grow it. But the rodeo shut down for 10, 12 years. And then who was the people that drove the comeback? And I think you mentioned it, but I would
say the drove the comeback was Greg Abbott. He brought the ranch rodeo concept to the South Fork, and then he brought it to the chamber, and my wife and Greg were the driving force as far as bringing it back.
Okay.
And really organizing the event, and then from there, it was a whole community.
A whole community got behind it.
People, I mean, like I said, there's probably lots of people I'm forgetting. Philip Trammell was a Trojan as far as bringing it back. Like I said, Keith Anderson, Bobby Smith, those guys contributed a bunch of just resources to make it work. Ken Swayze brought sand to the arena. We had just blackland dirt out there. We had to,
It sounds like a community effort. Really,
Archie Eubanks Trucking never was involved with the chamber. Man, he was a big proponent of contributing and would bring sand out there and help as far as the Zachary family.
Yeah, and it's nice to see they're back bringing sand and Rodeo dirt. Eubanks does that for us, and then of course Bates coming back and helping us with, again, bumpers for rear ends for horses. You have to. There's
roping box pads.
It's a rule. They're called. I call them bumpers for horses, but they're called roping box bumpers. And Brent will have a logo on his bumpers. This rodeo.
his horse bumpers.
Yeah, those are they're very pricey. You could almost get a car for those. And,
wow.
But you just every year there's something like that. But then every year you get somebody like Brent Bates who says, "Hey, I got these lights," or the school district who says, "We've got these softball bleachers that we need to move," and they repurpose them at the school property in our rodeo arena. And I think that's where it used to be such individual, so many passionate individuals. Well, you can't keep pushing those individuals. You eventually wear them out, and you want them just to come and enjoy it. In return, you have to replace them. And so for us, it's been really the partnership with the city, with the school district. They have allowed us to do some of the big dirt moving and things like that we couldn't have really created ourselves or done it as easy. And that's been where we've been able to create that partnership for those kind of facilities things, and then go to create a volunteer group to come help with the rodeo every night, every year. And it's two parts, but that second part is very important. And that's where the names are so long. You cannot name all of them, but they are, every year they're there. Roughly 120 people each night.
Wow. And I don't have this in the notes, but I think it would be, not that you may want to remember them or you want to maybe remember them, but I have my own couple of stories I could talk about the rodeo, and maybe I will. But what are some of your most, could be good or bad? Marvin, we start with you. What are maybe one or two of your most memorable good and bad moments that you've had over the years of just maybe problems that popped up or just, I'm sure you can think of probably more than we got time for, but Mike's got his notes ready.
I'm gonna sort through these. Let me rank them top five.
Mike's memory is probably a whole lot better than mine since I've been 20 years removed, or however many
fresh
years.
pain, yes, it's fresh pain.
17, 18 years removed.
Mike, what do you think? I know that we've had some rainouts. I know that we've had.
Did you have one?
No, because we always had ours in July, and it never rained in July.
Okay, here's the irony. My first one, they all talked about how the year before had been the first time it had ever rained in July, and they had rained out the rodeo in July of whatever, 03, 04. And so we moved it to September. Plus, it was very hot. And I mean, imagine right now, it's hard enough, but it was moving it into that really, really scary pocket of when the heat breaks and the fall comes and you become very weather friendly, very close to what the forecast is. But yeah, for me, there's a lot. And I mean, there's a few bulls that we were glad they came back. There's a few, always construction. But
that's one of my memories was, speaking of, remember last year, you and I think Tina were out there. We had gone out there to record a video, and we showed up, and this was only a month, maybe 5 weeks before the road, maybe 6, but not very far out. And we show up and we all pull in and I'm seeing things set up, and we all kind of turn around. We go, what is that? And there's this giant pipe that is coming up out of the tree line that is laying on the ground. There's a huge trench dug, and it's literally sitting where the vendor tents and the kiddos' playground and everything's supposed to be. And I can tell by the look on Mike's face that is not supposed to be there.
That wasn't in the plan. No. Yeah, that's a lot of it. The growth, the things that people are doing, and we do a rodeo once a year.
Yeah.
And so it's not like they're all thinking, okay, how will this affect the rodeo?
Sure.
but it does. And yeah, that big pipe was one. Where your parking lot becomes a soccer field, that's an adjustment. And a lot of the ways we've gotten, you got to get the rodeo participants in. They all have trailers. You have to get obviously the livestock in. So there's different routes. Used to you had about 3 routes in, and now there's really only one. So you have to get 3,000 people. You have to get sponsors, VIPs, rodeo participants, livestock, vendors, all in one entrance. And that's now our new problem. But yeah, it happens. The weather is always a problem because that September, we've
never
had
know.
hurricanes, we've had rain.
We had some great ones though. Great weather.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes.
And we've had the only rodeo I got to watch was the one we canceled because it was raining at the time and nobody stayed for it. And they still did the rodeo. So our whole volunteer group, about 80 of us, sat out there and it was still raining.
Front row.
Yeah, front row. We had all the barbecue we could eat.
VIPs.
The vendors and we saw a great rodeo. But yeah, that's always, Mother Nature is probably your biggest obstacle.
Sure.
You have to deal with that. But
Now that y'all gave me a little time, I got to share mine.
There you go.
Inwood National Bank has been a big sponsor, and I know Mike knows this real well, and they've been the lead sponsor of the rodeo for a number of years. And our president and CEO Gary Tipton has always really stepped up when it's come to sponsoring the rodeo. And employees Ray Carter and a lot of them out there are really involved with mutton busting, coordinating that, or just being really involved in it. Well, our president and CEO, Gary Tipton, came to the rodeo, and he was there with his family and so forth. And so traditional rodeo, you have a grand entry. And so he wanted to ride in the rodeo. Well, I put him on one of my horses, and he's a pretty good-sized guy, probably 6'3".
Yeah.
And I put him on, as he said, a 14-hand horse, and so that's from a size-wise, he's a pretty big guy. That's a pretty small horse for a 6'3" guy. 6'3". Anyway, long story short, my horse kind of got a little excited and kind of sidestepped and so forth. And so when he finally got to the end of the deal, he was like, "Man, let me off this." That was probably my kind of thinking back. That would have probably was.
That is
one
great.
of my best moves as far as putting my boss on that particular horse.
Not every day do you get to do that. Just to say, "What did you do today?" Well, I put the president of Inwood Bank on the back of a horse.
On the back of a small horse.
Yeah, he was a trooper. He made it all the way through. So
yeah, first year, J.C. Wylie, you remember he was a councilman here, and he was the chairman of the chamber. He was my immediate boss. And that year, he said, "I'm going to ride in the Grand Entry." Grand Entry, for anybody who doesn't know, is the opening of the rodeo where all the participants and everybody that's got a horse just kind of rides
Kind of
around.
a parade or a tour, right?
Yeah. So I knew he was going to do this, and I thought, yeah, someday I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I saw Red gave him one of his horses, and I saw that horse go left while the entire Grand Entry went right, and the horse was getting a little angry, and you could just see JC wasn't a horse rider, and he was
tension.
He was a little tense.
Yeah.
And they had to pull him out of the arena, and as he went by me, I thought, yeah, no, I'm going to stay over here.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't need to go in the Grand Entry. I'll just wave at them when they go by. But that's always the cool one, is the start of the rodeo. And I think Marvin mentions it. It was a lot of people, individuals who did so much each year, and it's transitioned into a lot of different entities.
Sure.
That, like I say, the partnership with the school and the city and the chamber to put this on, but then the many churches, the church groups, the nonprofits who are in our vendor area who use that that's their fundraiser. Last year, I think we had 3,500 each night, and how they all got in there, I don't know, but that's a lot of people that they get to fundraise with. So it becomes more of a really community event, and we just the community has grown, so we're just trying to keep up with it. But it's all because of that. It's that initial group that you saw that they cared about it, and they cared about the town, and this was the showpiece. And so that's why we do love it. It's a labor of love with emphasis on the labor, but it's a fun one to do.
I love that. Well, what I think people might be interested in, because we've covered a bunch of the first part. People may be interested in, you touched on it briefly. I know that we work with an organization, but what makes it a sanctioned championship rodeo? What is that designation that's there? What separates that from just if I went and had a piece of land and said, well, it's a rodeo because I brought some horses out and some guys are going to ride them around. What makes it outside of, you mentioned points and things like that. Do you know what that designation, why is that significant?
I'm going to give it a quick one.
Yeah.
And then probably let the actual answer be.
Marvin will judge your answer first.
The having a sanctioned rodeo, it gives you a body that rodeo people will naturally look at. It's I'm trying to think what it's like. It's like boxing in a way. It gives you credibility. It immediately. I mean, we are in the PRCA or UPRA schedule, so they all know that we're whatever on the tour stop. But then rodeo people are very. They have a. You can't fool them. And if you're doing something that's what they call a showdeo, that's a little different. And there's something about, in my experience of doing this, I've done both. We had a couple reschedules because of weather, and so we had just kind of put together a showdeo, and didn't even know I was putting together a showdeo, but then found out from the feedback that that was not what we're supposed to be doing because that is not a real rodeo. So there's a certain level of that, the traditional, from what I've seen. And then the sanctioning just gives you a governing body. It's why you have to go get bumpers for horses because that's a requirement. And it does give you a standard that all the participants have to follow too. So it's keeps it organized in what I've seen, and it's more real from what
The participants
I've heard.
know what they can expect because they know there are certain guidelines that you have to follow and
they
things
do.
like that.
They get added money to win. There's prizes at the end of the year, and they're getting points for each stop.
Okay.
So there is a cumulative end of year winner.
Okay.
How to do?
You did great.
Okay.
That's what it goes towards. I mean, PRCA is the ultimate. That's a pro rodeo that you ends up in Vegas in December of every year. That's the ones that are really talented, and that's where they'll end up. But there are local or regional or area type associations, whether it's CRRA and UPRA is one of them that's multi states in the South that is well contributed to. And there's a lot of professionals that they travel all over the United States, or at least all over the western part of the United States. But then there's a lot of good quality athletes out there that maybe they just don't have the ability to travel at that level of PRC.
Sure.
And UPRA is one that they can contribute or compete in a regional type organization that they points, or really it's by money. It's whatever they win money wise. Who's got the most at the end of the year is the champion for the year.
Okay.
And UPRA their finals have typically been in October, and so those that are close as far as competition wise or money and ranking wise, they want to come to these late rodeos that can
make a difference.
Make a difference as far as their end of the year winnings. This year's kind of a little different as well. That the UPRA had their finals in Sulphur Springs for a number of years, I believe it's in October. This year they're going to have it at the State Fair's first year. So the UPRA finals will be at the State Fair, and so it could drive even more that somebody's close, and you could really get some good quality contestants that are riding very expensive horses that require not bumpers, they're chute pads. Pads for horses that might be $50,000 to $100,000 horses that they're riding, and so they want to protect them, and so they do have some guidelines there. But
It's like banging your DJ car against something that's bad for your DJ car. So I have to make sure your DJ car is comfortable.
Yes, I like that. I can use some bumpers.
Easy example there.
For sure. I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, okay. Well, now we've talked. Y'all covered a little bit of the kind of movement and where it was originally and kind of where it relocated to and things like that. But what does it take? And you touched this on a little bit, Mike, and both of y'all can answer this. But what does it take now to put this event on every year in terms of sponsorships and the number of volunteers and sponsorship opportunities and volunteer opportunities that are available? Help, please, kind of right now. I mean, what does it take to do that, and what are you guys still looking for to make sure it happens and happens at the level that you want it to happen?
Wow. Good weather.
Okay. Number one.
Yeah, I've said it all along. If we can have a good weekend, people are excited about it, and it's a great event. It's kind of a mix between a craft fair and a vendor fair and a kids carnival with a rodeo, and it's all in your backyard. I mean, that's really, I'm realistic about it. It's a great event. It's a great community event, but it's more impactful for everybody around here because I don't have to go to Mesquite.
Right.
I can still get the same fun, bring my kids, get them running around, sugar them up, and then they sleep good at night. And that's kind of the family approach to how Wylie's been doing things. And we fit the rodeo right in there. And it's because it's a business organization, the chamber, we want to promote our members.
Sure.
And so in essence, we try to NASCAR it up and put anything anywhere. I've told people, you can do whatever you want. I got a 10 by 10 piece of dirt. That's what you get to use. Whatever you want to build is up to you.
Yeah.
And we get creative. We get a lot of fun things going on. And it's really kind of just that gathering point, beginning of the fall season, kids, families, parents all getting together. And then putting our businesses out there in front, whether they're shoot sponsors or whether they're event sponsors and they got a flag going around, or they're out in the kiddie corral sponsoring one of the bounce houses. It's tying the business to the community through this fun event.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are y'all looking for? Is there anything specific that y'all are looking for right now? I mean, outside of some of the things you already mentioned, I know that you need volunteers. I've gotten that email, but which there's so many that. Like you said, I think it's a labor of love that I've heard from most. There's some that I think that have retired their rodeo preparation days, but there's still plenty of us that, are excited about it. It was work last year for sure. I for the longest time, still had the poison ivy scars to prove it. But last year, and I got my fingers crossed. I don't know, you haven't seen it yet. Last year was a little different too, just because it sat for 2 years. So it was literally, it had sunk, and the weather. I mean, you talk about the weather, but if people are interested in, something, helping, being a part, sponsoring, all those things, I'm assuming they just reach out to the chamber and ask questions, or how does that work for those folks?
Oh yeah. They can call the chamber. They can go to the website, wyliechamber.org. There's a rodeo event page and it's all laid out there pretty self-explanatory, but then, just call the chamber. We can put you to work.
We'll find a spot for them.
And we can find,
I've got 4 or 5 ideas.
I don't want to scare people away.
Sure.
There are some easy and there's some, let's just say we have green slopes, we have blue slopes, and there are some black diamonds.
Yeah, there you go.
We save those for some of those people who've been doing it for a while.
For sure. No, and I really do. I mean, as much as everyone, and I get it, it's sweat, everything like that, but it was a lot of fun. It really was. You get to hang out. I mean, I mentioned to Marvin when you got here, I'm standing next to Jason Griner, who's usually in his dress slacks and everything else, and going to different business meetings and recruiting new businesses to town and things like that. And I'm standing next to him in the chutes that won't open about an hour before the rodeo starts. And we went through 12 cans of WD-40 and we're replacing boards and cutting. And then I changed in the ag barn, and wiped off, to go out there and, be a part of the rodeo. But it was, I'll be back. It was a lot of fun being that involved and getting to see it firsthand and the work that goes into it. You appreciate it. And even coming back on Sunday to clean up, you had FFA kids, you had Cub Scout kids or Eagle Scout kids. Like, you had this plethora of people from business community, local involvement groups and organizations that just showed up, and there was smiles on people's faces. We were hot, we were sweating, I don't know how much water we went through, but everybody together made it happen, and it was a good time. And that's, anybody that asks me, I'm like, yeah, it's work. If you don't want to work, then I don't want you to show up either. But if you're willing to do a little bit of work, then it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be involved.
Yeah, we coined the phrase, networking is what we do at the chamber. Well, the rodeo is a little bit more like sweat working, because you're out there sweating next to the bank president, and you get to know people a little better when you're in that kind of environment versus more the business environment, and you're out there and you learn who those people are, and who there are people who it's not the best thing for them. They want to go do something different. But I'll tell you, we have every possible volunteer option for you. You can drive a golf cart, you can sit and take tickets, or you can get up in the chutes and help those guys there too. But I tell people, just come do it. You got to experience it once, because that's when you know what you're talking about, or what I talk about constantly is I hate it up until you're there on Saturday night or Friday night and you see the reason you're there and you go, yeah, no, this is good. I'll do this
Yeah,
again.
you see the crowd and you see the kids and you see, I mean, it's not just kids. I mean, there's tons of kids there doing the, different things, but you just see the vendors making relationship. I mean, everything that you saw after you put in and I say it was Thursday, we're probably out there like Tuesday, realistically. Yeah. But, we're out there for a few days and it's just, you sit back, and I've done events before outside of the rodeo, just church or local organizations, and you sit back and you go, you take that breath and you go, this is why. I mean, you feel rewarded, regardless of what you did. If you put WD-40 on shoots, it doesn't matter what you did, or you took tickets, you feel like you played a part in making something happen. It's pretty special for our town.
Yeah, and it's always, this is why is the important one. When you come to the this is why with the rodeo, it's because of the community. It's because of the business. It's because of, you look at that and think, this is what it maybe used to be. And you want it to expand further than just the rodeo, but that to me is the why.
Yeah.
I mean, when I do it, I'm tired, I'm angry, I'm bitter for at least a month, but that night you go, okay, this is why we do this. And I look forward to it. I hope everybody comes out.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I keep thinking of this story that we talked about, runaway horses or small horses or whatever. In coming to the Mesquite Rodeo with my grandfather, he was a Shriner. He was on the mounted patrol. So they always did the big show during break or whatever. And I used to go to practice with him all the time. And he had this big horse. His name was Jack or something. He was just a big horse. And while they were on break, I'd always get to ride it around the arena. Well, that horse was so trained that you come in the arena and you come around, and when you get to the end, across, he would take off because they would run out. And so I'm out in the arena by myself, making laps, and he gets to the end and he turns around. I'm like 12 years old on this big horse. My feet barely don't even reach the stirrups. And this horse bolts out of the arena just like full gallop. And I'm just holding on to the horn like crazy.
Eventually he's going to stop.
Yeah, he's on autopilot. He runs out. My grandfather jumps in front of him trying to stop him. And he runs all the way to the trailer and stops. And I don't know how I didn't get thrown off that horse, but that was one of my crazy experiences on rodeos and riding horses and as a kid.
You put on an event, right? That's what you're doing. You put on an event, and then you sit there and you go, oh wait, it's an event that's got 1,000-pound animals that will do whatever they want to do. It doesn't fit a schedule, and some of the nights and some of the different animals have created the excitement.
Yeah,
just because it's live and they're going to go where they're going to go. And I give a lot of credit to some of those guys that have to hang on to the bulls and trying to ride for 8 seconds. That is brutal.
We've had some of them leave the rodeo before.
Yeah, that was one of those stories on my top 10, but I'm not sure I'm allowed to say it.
We'll just keep that one.
Statute of limitations on the legal issues might not be over.
That's crazy. So do we have the dates this year and the times and where we can get tickets? And
easiest way to get tickets, go to the Chamber website where it's actually live already. We've sold, right now we're at 10 on Friday, and we have 20 on Saturday.
So good start.
There's still a little space left, but it's early.
Seats.
It's real early still.
September 9 and 10, and you can get family packs that have different numbers depending on what you want, and it's from basically the standard ticket $5 to $15 for an adult, and then if you have groups, we work with you on rates, and happy to have you. And all that information is on the Chamber website or our Facebook page.
And y'all got all kinds of options, I know, and we don't have to go through all of them. I know they can see them on the site, but there's, reserved, there's VIP options, there's different types of stuff, correct?
Yeah. One of the problems or the good problems we've had is because we've had good turnout and we've had to make sure we have enough seats.
Sure.
And we've been past capacity the last couple rodeos. That's great. But we've also expanded some reserve seating so that you can reserve your spot. You have your spot. Nobody's going to take it. And now we've got about 300 of those.
Nice.
The arena itself holds about 1,500 depending on how many are standing. And that's a great one. It's a great investment to just
know you got a spot.
know your seats there. But then the vendor area is the thing that you can go check out. It's off the arena, and it's got kids games and stuff that you can eat and buy, and carnival kind of foods and games, and it's just a nice break if you just want to get out.
Oh, and you're going to go. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in that arena. Last year, I know I was standing around taking pictures and doing things, and I'm standing on the opposite side. I'm back by the livestock, which how it usually smells back there. but you kept catching a breeze off those trees where the pipe was and magically disappeared thanks to whoever made that happen. But you could just smell it. It was like corn dogs and waffle fries. But I'm standing over there, I was like, it shouldn't smell this good over here. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take pictures from the other side and get me some waffle fries while I'm over there.
Yeah.
So ticket information on the chamber website. And I know we've talked about rough stock. We've done that, but just briefly, like, what's your best plug for it? What can people expect if they show up Friday night? What are they going to see?
Marvin Fuller on a bull.
You heard it here. All right, that's the episode,
Thanks for having
folks.
me,
We'll
guys.
see you next time.
Appreciate you.
Right after Mike.
I feel like, I mean, it feels like Mike says yes, then Marvin has to say it. I don't know. Maybe that's for a topic for another day.
No, I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of great rodeo action. If you're not familiar with rodeo, that's even better because it's just the energy. These are a lot of younger participants. It's kind of like the proving ground. They kind of cut their teeth on these, and the kids they're passionate.
Nobody's mailing it out there.
Oh no, no, and it's on occasion, yeah, there may be a bull or an animal that might get out, and that makes it even more fun.
Yeah, because then it's just a community event, right? Like
Becomes a community event to bring that thing back. That's right.
survival of the fittest at that point.
It's like those videos of the running of the bulls.
Yeah.
People down the street and jumping out of the way of the bull. Yeah.
Well, then that's how you promote it. Then you go like, y'all didn't know that y'all were going to get to participate in
It's
this
part of the
level
show.
of interaction.
Yeah.
We've trialed that a couple times. Test that water to see if we could get a bull running out there and see how it would work. And yeah, we don't do it every year, but on occasion we'll throw that out.
We'll
there.
test it out tonight. Well, that is awesome. I'm looking forward to the rodeo. Wes, did you have anything else? I know we're going to put these links and everything. Yeah. I know there's a link I saw on y'all's Facebook page too, where they can go and go over to the chamber website if that's easier for some folks. But I always look forward to the rodeo every year. We need everyone listening and watching. Everybody's got fingers crossed for the good weather, and I know that that's going to happen. I know we're not allowed to say the R word once we get into September because you told me that last year. We're not allowed to say that. We can say rain now.
Well, it worked last year, and that's good.
It did. It worked really good.
We'll go with it.
Mike, Marvin, I appreciate you guys being here and giving us this awesome kind of backstory of the rodeo and history, and I'm looking forward to the rodeo this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. But thank y'all for being here.
It'll be great.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for what y'all do for our community.
Who's our sponsor today, Wes? We have a sponsor today?
I think we do have a sponsor.
I'm going to let you get that one.
You going to let me get it? Is it official?
It's official. We can go ahead and do that.
Okay. Well, I'll do it on the outro.
There you go.
This episode of the Live, Love, Wylie podcast is brought to you by the Wylie EDC.